local, local level, and also the guest from our national level. So now we would like to so some of the difficulties, so our moderator can't join. So now I would like to any kinds of brief or anything. Now I directly go to the presentation. So I would like to share my screen. So today basically for these events we have one of the research doing by ECAD, leading by ECAD. This is access to lands for the displacement people, and this project is funded by the NORAD, and we are also working with the IMO in Bangladesh, and also the this funded by NORAD, and also coordinated by the platform on disaster displacement. Now I like to share my screen presentation. Is it visible?
Yes, it is.
So the research is about action research on access to land for displaced population. This is the case study in Bangladesh, and specifically in the Chorland and also in Dhaka. So the objectives of this study was to condition of the land tenure and access of displaced persons, and also talking about the impacts they are facing for the displacement. So the method we are using to conduct this study, this is the data collection, also the community-based engagements to participate the participants to more interactive way to collect the data, and also we will review the literature and also the some of the gray litter standard documents to what are the existing situations on access to lands, and then we will do a questionnaire survey, and also the mixed method, also the observational methods, and also one of the focus group discussion that allow us to validate the questionnaire, and also bringing the findings from the field. So this is the actual the locations. Our research location is one in the Shirazganj districts, where we have find the directly impacted by the river erosions people in Shirazganj, and we also working in a origin place in it's called Omorpur. It's inside the river, so it's a accredited land. It's called Chor area, and another one is a metropolitan destination, that is Dhaka. So we were collecting data for the four context. From the four context, one is the Chor area, that was the origin, and one is the nearest destination, that is close to the origin, and also another one was the resettlement project. So government have some of the resettlement project in that area, so we have also collect this data from the resettlement projects, and also we are collecting data from the nearest destination near from the metropolitan destination, that was in Dhaka, in different slum. So this is that was the four context specific data we are collected by this research. So this is the overall socio-economic demographic information. So we have previously mentioned the we are surveyed in four areas, that is Chor, resettlement projects, nearest destination, and metropolitan areas. So here is the average income. We have found the highest income in the Chor areas, and the lowest one is the nearest destination. And the graph that was mentioned about the circle, this is the number of times displaced population. Actually, this data shows that the people are mostly displaced in the Chor area, because they are in the trapped in the original destination. So here is the graph in the blue. There is a chart, the number of the dominant area they are displaced, the number of, you know, the number of persons are they displaced. And then we have found the multiple times or the variety of times and number of displacement person we have found in the metropolitan distance. And also we have in the nearest destination we have people found in the displaced in one time, displaced in more than 10 times as well. And the next one, so this is basically when we are collecting data, so we needs to try to gender diversity and the inclusion, and also which type of voice or which aged person are a response or the participants for the research, so it creates the value. So that's why we are the percentage of the household survey is dominated by the age group, and also the higher aged group person is more than 55 plus person is 32% of the people was aged like 50 or over 56 years. And the male and female ratio was 60 to 40, just because of the the when we are conducting survey at that time, the female are we have found are available, and male person are we have found in the some times of difficulties. And also when we try to access to lands, focusing on the access to lands, what is the existing scenario, so we also try to bring in the inclusions from the female and male disability persons. So in our study the 4% of the people were included. So, and also we are focusing in educational status in the context specific educational status, and which type of person or which group of person where we conduct the study in this area, where when what type of their educational status. So we have found the more of can sign. It's we have found from the four context, we have found the more dominated by the can sign person, nearly 35%. And also we have found the nearest destination. There are the three kinds of uh, the educational status, that is can sign, primarily, secondarily, hierarchy secondary, and the bachelor's ones. So but the dominated person from for this study, we have found the education status is can sign. And this is the one of the scenario main reasons of the displacement. So when we conducted the study, the majority of we have found the revaluation, because one of our targeted area was Shirazganj, that is highly vulnerable on the river erosion. And also when we study in the metropolitan distance in Dhaka slums, we have found the so mixed mass of the natural disaster like river erosion, flood, cyclone and storm surge, and some of the slow onset, that is salinity intrusions and others. And what are the impacts of this displacement when we explore these ones? So we have found that in the chor nearest destination and resettlement projects, so in dominated by the river erosion and floods, and we have find lots of impacts on loss of land assets and livelihood, loss of economical stability, physical distress or anxiety, also the cultural identity, loss of cultural identity, the heritage, also the income reduction, also the damage of infrastructure, agricultural crops loss, damage of communication, loss of biodiversity, natural resources. Also we have found that high recovery and rebuilding cost, and also we have found the increase of salinity, destruction and crops food system. But in the metropolitan area we have found the lots of dominated disaster at that area, and the loss and damage is impacts is most high. And for metropolitan area we have found that river erosion, floods, cyclones, storm surge, and the slow onset. So mix match of the disaster and cost of lots of impacts. So this is the one of the scenario, the access to land after they displaced, the person are accessing in the land. So for the river erosion, maximum of the people are goes to for the rent. Goes they are go to the nearest destination or anywhere, but it is cost on the rent. But in the chor area, they are basically take lease without document. But in the nearest destination, we have found they are mostly occupied when they displaced, and they occupy the government cash land or any other area. But in the metropolitan area, they are basically rented their houses. After displacement, they rented the houses to in the metropolitan destinations. But in the flood, in the situation of flood, we have found that they are accessing in the land in the metropolitan area in rental basis. So, and another scenario in cyclone, we have found that 75% people are rented. They take the rented after the displacement. They goes to the metropolitan area, but they don't have don't have the situation on occupying. And here is we have found a small number of people occupying, but we have found that they are displaced many times ago. That's why they can occupy their land. But most of the cases they are rent the house, their land for their housing. And in the slow onset, we have found that people mostly they access their land or house by the rental situation. So here is another situation on livelihood activities. So before or after displacement, what are their livelihood change? So we have found in the Chor area, there is a, the fixed term of livelihood opportunities for them. But in the nearest destination, there is a diverse range of engaged to the livelihood activities. And we have found in the most people are engaging diverse of livelihood activities in the metropolitan destination. So it is clear that from this graph, so the people are displaced in their origin, and they move to the nearest destination or resettlement projects or the metropolitan destination. So they have the more chances to engage with the livelihood activities in the metropolitan destination as well as the nearest destination. And in terms of scenario, so when they're displaced, so what is the registration after displacement? So in the Bangladeshi, they have the laws. So if you destroy or damage your land or erode your lands, you have to go to the authorities to claim the land or to register their land. So we have found that after displacement, 25% of people goes for their registration, but 75% people are not goes to for the registration. So where they go actually for the registration? So they are initially goes to the Union Parishad, or that is the local administrative area in Bangladesh. And some people goes to the Upazila level district land officer. This is the second tier of the administrative area in Bangladesh. It's kinds of sub district. And how they learn from, so they learn from social networks, and also learn from the community that if you lost the land, then you have go to the for the registration in different authorities. And if not, some people, around 75% people are not registering the land. So if not, then why? So they don't, why? So just the answer is they are unaware, or the lack of information of knowledge. And also there are the difficulties obtaining legal documents, and also some of the people are under land. So when we are in the chor areas, we have found that the land is under the water, so that why we need to claim. And some of the reasons, what are the other practices are existing in their origins. So they said that we have the local practices, so we don't need to go to for the registration or anything like this. And some of the people says, yeah, we have experience in the early years, so that's why we don't know why is our land is exist or not. And in the perception of land right knowledge, we have found that female have the less knowledge on legal rights than male. If we go to the context specific, then we will find the on behalf of legal rights concerning land access and the ownership, we have found that the female are the dominated person. They don't have the knowledge, they don't know. Some of the women know about the, but don't know completely on the land right knowledge. So So if we closely look on the graph, so we have found that the female does not know or completely don't know about their land access knowledge or the ownership. And on the alluvial and diluvial law, so we have the alluvial and diluvial law. So we have found that in the context specific, the woman doesn't have the knowledge on the alluvial or diluvial law, but the male person have the dominated in that area. They have the some kinds of alluvial and diluvial law, but the in it's one of the one of the limitation of our study was to the 60-40%, 60% of the female and 40% of the male. So this is one of the dominants for the from the results is knowledge of alluvial diluvial law. On the context specific, we have found the women are dominated who don't know about the alluvial or diluvial law. And this is one of the graph that we ask the open-ended question to the participants, how we can improve better livelihood options or opportunities. So the majority of them said, yes, the livelihood opportunity can be, we need the livelihood opportunity so much, and they prioritize this one, and it can be agricultural resources like lands, any kinds of vegetables and kinds of seeds, providing and different type of business opportunities like giving a stall or giving a small farming activities. So we have found that 41% of them are talking of those different specific answer to how can we improve their livelihood opportunities. And we have found that 28% people talking about the financial assistance to better to better engage their livelihood opportunities. Some of them are 18% people talking about the if we do have the training opportunities, then we can do better in the livelihood opportunities. And the less amount of percent, 12% people also enhancing, also prioritize their the property right knowledge or the properties ownership also can be a better options to do improve their better livelihood opportunities. And then when we are asking, does the displacement person have access to finance, microcredits or banking or loans? So in the context specific, we have found the most of the cases they don't have the access to finance. But why they don't have the access to finance, we have found after the displacement they don't have the lack of they don't have the enough resource to ensure that the NGOs or any kinds of financial organization they support them and give them the loan. And also we have found that some kinds of area like resettlement person area, other areas, there the diverse people are live in their area, and they don't have the social networks. So the microcredits or any other organization doesn't comes to them and don't give them their the loans. And some of the people we have found that in the context specific, they have, yes, they have the access to finance, but little amount of person, and with the alternative ways. And also they have the some of the social networks, so they can assign the person, yes, if I unable to pay the loan, they will pay the loan. So these kinds of responsibility, they have access their loans. And then we also ask the open-ended question to better how can we better knowledge on access to land. And then we have found the local level announcements through the miking, FGDs, and any others can helps to improve the knowledge on access to land, and also rising awareness. And they also specifically mention about the engage local governments and community seniors knowledgeable person. They have especially mentions in knowledge sharing, and also enhancing accessibility of land related information. They emphasize on that, and they also emphasize on that the social or the digital media for information dissemination will be helpful for them. And they also emphasize on directly support from authorities without middlemen, and the strong legal and government representatives are essential for fair land access. And lastly, they mentioned training on land legal rights through local government like AC lands, Union Parishad, NGOs, and others can help to better knowledge on access to land. So thank you all. Thank you. So if you have any question or any other, please let me know.
Very important study, very good study.
So if we don't have any question or any other feedbacks, then we'll move to our next session.
I do have a few.
That will be
Can
our
I
panel
ask? I have a few questions.
discussion. So I would like to introduce our panelist. So Tasneem ma'am, can you please turn on your mic and introduce?
I have turned on. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
we can hear.
I'm Tasneem Siddiqui from Ramru and University of Dhaka, and part of this avert minimize displacement project.
Now I'd like to, our local guest. We have our local guest because of the unavailability of our municipal authority. So yeah, now I'd like to request you to introduce yourself.
Good
Habibur.
afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. This is Habibullah Bahar. I am working with a local NGO called MMS Manav Mukti Sanstha based at Shirazganj. Basically, we are working in Saur area with in Brahmaputra Jamuna River Basin area. We are working, covering with our activity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to Dennis Humbauer. So can you please?
Yes, hello everybody, and thank you for inviting me to this event. My name is Dennis. I work as Director of Research and Knowledge Management for Slyken Trust. Slyken Trust is a non-profit think tank working on climate change and a number of thematic areas related to that. At a national level, at the local level, but also at the global level in the UNFCCC process and other multilateral negotiations. Yeah, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Dennis. So now I'd like to request Lorenzo.
Thank you, Lutfer. Good afternoon. Salam alaikum, everyone. Lorenzo Guadagno here, working with the Secretariat of the Platform on Disaster Displacement in Geneva. We are a state-led initiative working at the policy and a little bit at the operational level on disaster displacement and collaborating with ICCCAD and RAMRU colleagues, along with many other partners on this specific project. Over to you.
Thank you so much to our speakers and panelists. So now I would like to request Habibur Rahman from the
Habibullah
MMS.
Bahar. Yeah.
Habibullah Bahar, sorry. So Habibullah Bahar, can I like to request you to what are the impacts and challenges you are facing on displacements, and what are the findings from your field, because you are working in the Chor area, basically in the Chor area. So now we like to ask you the question. So what are the impacts and challenges are they are facing in the Chor area people? Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for giving me opportunity to say something about displacement with for the riverbank erosion. I would like to apologize as because I am very poor in English. So I shall try to speak in English. If you difficult to understand the English, then you can raise question and I can try again. This issue is very much important issue, especially in the those are living riverbank area or river basin area. We are working in the high risky river erosion area, prone to highly prone to riverbank erosion, especially Yamuna river basin area. We call Shirazganj, Tangal, then Manikganj and Pabna area. I would like to say something about riverbank erosion, the impact of the riverbank erosion people. Actually, they lost their homestead, homestead land, crops, and homestead-based income option, and homestead-based house and rooms, etc. Actually, 100% lost their home land and homestead and crops, and they lost their homestead-based income option. Sometimes they were busy with the homestead-based income option like poultry rearing or cattle rearing or other kinds of income option. And due to riverbank erosion, they lost their income option, homestead-based income option actually, and they lost their social capital. And actually they were living in a social discipline. Due to riverbank erosion, people are not going in same place. Different people going to different place, and they are losing their social harmony. And in new place, new people, they are not accepting very well. I know, very. They are treated as refugee people. They are treated as sour people. They are treated as a most vulnerable people, unlucky people. This type of bad language, bad term, they had to hear. And in new place, after displacement, they cannot manage good land for reconstruct their houses. They they somehow they manage the land with a embankment or government caste land or other high risk area. I mean, they like to reconstruct their house in safe place, but they are not able to manage the land in safe place. So they try to live in other risky area, other shore or riverbank side. They manage the land. This land is not very much fertile or not usable or not suitable for living. So they say, for example, they are managing a land with lease, temporary lease. This is very social culture. This is not legal acceptance in Bangladesh, in Saur area. So they are taking lease, rental basis, you can say, per year they are giving 5,000 or 10,000 taka for land, but this land is lowland. They have to raise this land. If they are not able to raise this land, they are remaining in the risky condition due to another flood. Next season, if it is normal flood, then their house is inundated. This is the crisis. This is the big challenge they have to face. Another thing,
Thank you, Hamid. thank you, however, because we have the other panelists too. So this is
Okay,
really
okay.
defined. So we have found the loss of impacts that we are facing in the displaced people. So thank you so much for your viewpoint and sharing the impacts of displacements. So now I going to the next next speaker, but I would like to introduce our moderator just because of the internet issues and some technical problems. Ashfakur Rahman Bhai will not join in the timely. So now I'd like to introduce our moderator and take over the all of the responsibility to the Ashfakur Rahman Bhai. But before I going to this, I have because of that network issue, so I don't hear you, Tasnim ma'am. You have a questions maybe can we? Yeah.
Yeah, after listening to your presentation, I just wanted to know if you have taken, because it is very important working on land right. So whether you have with the land office, the land documents, are you going through them, and legal documents like, Shikosti Parsti you mentioned, those documents, and then whether reform is needed or how to take them to people, this kind of thing I just wanted to know. I'm sure you did this.
So, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your question. So yes, it is an important one. So we for this one, so we will go to the AC land officer and also the ALRD. So we're closely working with these kinds of the alluvial and diluvial law. So when we go to the AC office, Assistant Commissioner of Land, and then we also one of our land ministry is a digital surveying. So when we are interviewing them, we have found that yes, we have the existing these kinds of law, but when we go to the local level, we have found that they said, yes, we have this type of documents, but when we have the big issue with the big less land loss, then we will actually claim this land that these laws are actually work. But in some cases, when there is a 2, 3, or 5 or 10 people's lost their land, so it is difficult for them to assess these custom systems. So if we go for the specifically to solve the problem, so we need to we can enter to the system in like this way, and we can reform this one. And in the land right law, in land reform into 2013 Act, 2023 Acts, we have found that they mention about the landless or the homeless people, but they don't mention about the the different kinds of disaster they can prioritize their access to lands or the government lands or the caste lands. So thank you. Now I'd like to take the floor, Ashfaq Rahman Bhai.
Thank you very much, Lutfur Bhai. I hope you can see me and you can hear me. Great. So previously, when running late for a meeting, we used to blame traffic jam. It seems due to the beauty of technology and the Zoom meetings, team meetings, we can no longer blame traffic jams, but we can now blame IT glitches, system glitches for late arrival. But my sincerest apologies, distinguished panelists and the participants, for my delayed entry. I think the event has progressed so far and it has gone very well. It's my pleasure now to invite Professor Tasnim Siddiqui, who teaches at the University of Dhaka and also a founding chair for the Refugee and Migratory Movement Unit at the University of Dhaka. She has done many works on displacement and climate mobility. She is also a driving force behind the government of Bangladesh's national strategy for internal displacement and internal displacement management. So, madam, it would be great if you can guide us through what types of policies and interventions are needed to prevent displacement, to prepare for displacement, and to ensure durable solutions. If you can draw from your vast experience working at the local and national level in Bangladesh, that would be really great. Thank you, madam. The floor is yours. My only request is that in the interest of your time, you keep your remarks short, preferably within 5 minutes. The floor
5
is
minutes.
yours, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Ashfaq. I think, if I'm to talk about the policy, what policies are needed, Bangladesh is lucky that we already have a national strategy. And in that strategy, there like prevention, then protection and durable solution, all is there based on rights. But what is our problem? Our problem is now how to implement those national sort of strategy and action plan. That is where the problem lies. So if we talk about the first thing in respect to prevention, the document that we have the national strategy and also the action plan. In prevention, there are 5 types of activities, very not activities, targets set. No? First is data, understanding the risk. So in prevention, you need data to understand where this is displacement is occurring and how many can be displaced in future to develop your program. Second is strengthening the climate disaster risk governance. We do have MODMR, we do have SOD and other documents, but at the same time, when you concentrate on displacement, you will see that there are still vacuum in governance, and also the structure that has been provided in the national strategy, that structure is also yet to materialize. Then the third thing is investing in DRR and climate change adaptation. This is 2 areas I would say a lot of work is going on. And in the Bangladesh case, we are like ICCCAD and other, if we just talk about Professor Salimul Haq, his contribution in adaptation. So we do have a lot of good practices in adaptation, climate change adaptation. And also, like if we think of DRR, that's where also we are doing quite all right. Then creation, the main thing for those who are displaced, or if you want to prevent displacement, then along with displacement of your homestead, displacement of, job, like employment, that is important. And in prevention, employment creation, alternative employment, that's why comes in a major way. And land use. Today we are discussing land and their land right, land tenureship. And I know in particularly in Dhaka and other areas, poor people pay more even than someone paying in, at one time paying in Bonani. For them per capita, the migrants who come to urban location, displaced people, they pay more. So this is where prevention things needs to be done or action needs to be taken. Second is protection during displacement. That is also strengthening humanitarian and disaster relief assistance. And that particular program is also in Bangladesh. A lot of NGOs are involved, international development partners are involved. But in the whole scenario, displacement has to be prioritized. That's where maybe the lacking is. And then protecting fundamental rights of internal displaced person during displacement. When a person is being displaced, that is where also we need to work more. No? And the third thing you ask is about durable solution. All 3 phases of durable solution, if you say return, local integration, and resettlement, everywhere, this is where it's new, lot of things needs to be done. When we were hearing from Mr. Habib, he was saying that how host community does not treat the displaced person who have relocated in a place and trying to resettle. That person is not taken with good stride, and host community and displaced community in many occasions have problem. And then if you come to planned relocation, one of the sites of this study was planned relocation, and in our case as well, at quite a few sites we have studied on planned relocation, you do see they have land right. Women and men have land right when it is planned relocation. But the problem is livelihood in those areas. And then any political turmoil currently, since we are following up many of the relocation sites, I can see that with the political change, now new group of political sort of, what should I say, uh, power are trying to take over those relocation sites and trying to establish their sort of control over them and political power. And these people are vulnerable. So even though you have land right, even though you have other things, but then the control of different political parties is one of the problems that recently you witness in those areas. So I think I will stop here. I tried to discuss all three things that you have asked. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Siddiqui. Now we would hear examples from the same region, but from another country of South Asia. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Dennis Mombar, who is working as a Director of Research and Knowledge Management for Silken Trust. Mr. Mombar, the question is kind of same for you, which I asked to Professor Siddiqui. What types of policies and interventions are needed to prevent displacement, to prepare for it, and to ensure durable solution for displaced population? We're very eager to hear your experiences from Sri Lanka and other countries, particularly the best practices which can offer potential of replication for other countries in South Asia. Mr. Mombar, the floor is yours, and being mindful of the time, please keep your remarks short, maybe preferably within 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll try to keep it short, but of course it's a very broad topic with a lot of things to say. Actually, before I come to Sri Lanka, maybe I would like to zoom out a bit and build also on what Professor Tasneem has said, because we do a lot of work in the global process, and we did an analysis of all the national adaptation plans that have been submitted by countries across the world, and also nationally determined contributions and how they incorporate human mobility. And I think it's quite interesting to look at this and see what other countries are doing across the world on these areas, and then how it connects also to what is happening in Bangladesh or in Sri Lanka. So in the study we did, out of all the national adaptation plans, the NAPs that have been submitted, the majority does refer to human mobility in some form. That's either migration, displacement, or planned relocation. And 70% have some kind of mention or reference of displacement, and almost 40% have concrete provisions to address displacement. And for NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, the percentage is much lower. It's about 40% that do refer to mobility in some way, but only 15% refer to displacement specifically, and only 6% have concrete provisions on displacement. It's also partly because of the nature of NDCs, which are very mitigation focused, and adaptation components are lesser, and also NAPs, of course, are submitted predominantly by developing countries. So anyway, we went through these concrete provisions that countries have, and we looked at the categories of these. So to kind of see what are the kinds of actions that countries have committed to doing on displacement or other forms of human mobility. And I think it mirrors very much what Professor Tasneem has just listed for Bangladesh, because one of the key categories is data, is enhancing the availability of data and also closing the existing data gaps when it comes to displacement. So basically, where people are being displaced, what are their needs, where are they going to, and what are also areas, if we look into the future, that we can project to experience more displacement, and what are the possible scenarios based on the emission pathways and the global warming pathways, which areas will be the most affected and where are people most likely to move to when they're being displaced, or also when they are migrating. So that's the first area. The second area is similar again, governance. It's looking at the enabling environment, the policy environment, and how this incorporates displacement, but also how it's integrated across different sectors. Because if we look at this, it's not just a climate question or a DRR question, but it's also important for the health sector, for water management, for food systems, for labor, for all these different and for settlements, infrastructure, basic services. So to look at how it's incorporated in these sectors and how the policy coherence is across these different sectors and also across different governance levels. And then the last major category was protecting or supporting those who are displaced or who are on the move. And again, similar to what is there at the national level, looking at how they can be protected, how shelter can be provided, how healthcare and continuity of healthcare can be ensured for those who are having to move away from their places of usual residence. And then the two other categories that we have seen in these plans is either preventing mobility, for example, by adapting in place or employing disaster risk reduction measures, or looking at mobility as an adaptation measure. And that's very rare in the case of displacement. But for example, if you look at relocation of people out of high-risk areas, this can be seen as a way to adapt to climate impacts that might be to reach a level that cannot be easily dealt with in these places. And in Sri Lanka, this is something we have studied in terms of landslide risk mostly. So the government in Sri Lanka has classified areas for high risk, medium risk, and low risk in terms of landslide. And basically, in terms of medium risk areas, are trying to support people to stay in place through disaster risk reduction measures and through adaptive measures. And in some of the high risk areas, they're relocating people. And I think what we have seen there is similar to what we have seen in the case study from Bangladesh that was presented earlier. There's a lot of hesitance of people to move out of these areas and a lot of issues with those who have moved to resettlement areas. Even though the government is providing some support, they don't have the same access to livelihoods and also passive income. They don't have the same social networks, the same access to healthcare and education. So there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed when we look at this. And I think we are seeing some emerging good practices that revolve around participatory processes that are about ensuring the access to like livelihoods and also retraining or reskilling if necessary. And also, as mentioned, the land rights and access to land. We have also, I think, one other aspect before I run out of time very briefly. We have these national plans, we have these global processes, for example, on loss and damage or adaptation. But a lot of the actual measures will be implemented at the local level. So there's a big gap between these national plans and what's happening at the local level. And there are multiple approaches how to bridge this gap that we have studied. So one is basically developing specific subnational plans. So in Sri Lanka, the government is developing provincial adaptation plans. Provinces in Sri Lanka are the second highest administrative level. So basically going from the national plan to that provincial level to implement specific adaptation plans and then scale these down further to the district level, the divisional secretariat level, the Karamandaladari level, to the ground community level, where they will be implemented. Other countries have taken the approach of actually not developing separate plans, but kind of breaking down the actions from the national plan into local level and then just mainstreaming them into the local development plans, into the local DRR structures. And one of the key components for that is also to build the capacities at the local level, to enhance access to finance and other resources at the local level, and to make sure that local actors are part of the design, even of the national plan from the beginning, and that there is local leadership in the development of this plan. And I think I've gone over 5 minutes already, so I will just cut it short here. But I think one of the three of the key things to look at is one, the data situation, then the integration across different sectors and different levels of governance, and then this bridging the national level to the local level where actions are going to be implemented. So to have a system in place that translates the National Adaptation Plan or the NDCs or other national policies and plans to the local level and make sure that there is a capacity and also a inclusive process where the local stakeholders are involved in the national planning process and vice versa. So that there is a strong interconnection between the national and the local level and the implementation component. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis Mombar. So we've heard from the local level, then we've zoomed out to national level, further zoomed out to the South Asia region and other parts of the globe. Now we're here from a person who is working at a global level and he would walk us through how global frameworks and initiatives are addressing disaster displacement and exactly where this intersects with disaster risk reduction, the initiative that's now flying around for loss and damage, the humanitarian development nexus, all these big jargons we use in development and humanitarian world. So, dear participants, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Lorenzo Guadagno, who is working as a project coordinator at the Platform on Disaster Displacement. Just to give you a background, the Platform on Disaster Displacement was born from the Nansen Initiative, which through several regional consultative processes and global consultative processes has come up with a protection agenda, which was endorsed by, if I remember correctly, 109 countries. So that's quite a big of an achievement. So Lorenzo, the floor is yours. We're running over time, but since we're kind of zooming out at global level, I'll request participants, please bear with us for a few more minutes. It's going to be very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashfaq. I hope you can hear me. Yeah,
Loud and
perfect.
clear.
I see nodding. So thank you very much for the introduction. Thanks a lot for everyone else who has already brought their experience. I think my intervention is going to be a little bit specular to what Dennis was doing, but looking to the other side of this equation. So instead of going at the local level, but thinking more at the global level. I'm sure you've heard at this point about this diversity of policy frameworks that we have and trying to provide recommendations for all sorts of different elements of the action that we need in order to support the lives of people at risk in the context of climate change. So Ashfaq was mentioning DRR, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, under the climate change policy. There are all the different components on adaptation, on loss and damage that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. There is the elements that are specific to human mobility with the two global compacts on migration and on refugees. There are clearly the Sustainable Development Goals that are the umbrella for all these other more sectoral interventions. But the important thing, I think, to really keep in mind for this conversation is that human mobility, displacement, migration plan relocations are really part of all these conversations. They are part of these conversations because it is clear that human mobility is one of the impacts of climate change, of disasters, of environmental degradation in the different forms that they take locally. Because it's clear that human mobility produces more negative impacts for different people. Because as I think Dennis was saying, it's also clear that human mobility can be an option for people to strengthen their resilience, to cope with some of these impacts. And because I think if we don't look at these human mobility processes and patterns that we are experiencing, we're not really accounting for the world as it will be, right? And then we are not going to be able to really look ahead as we look at a different world where climate will be different, disaster patterns will be different, but also the distribution of population will be different. And actually, I think with so many people in Bangladesh present in this call, you are probably one of the countries that's thinking more around this, right? With this attention to planning in the context of potential population movements. I think the research that ICCCAD led and the interventions that we've had from the local level really allow us to think a little bit about how these different patterns translate into potential negative impacts on land, on livelihoods, on well-being, on security for the different people. So I think as we are looking back to the global picture, perhaps the challenge is a little bit how do we make sure that we manage to capture all these different local impacts? How do we manage to make sense of the different local narratives, and how do we manage to create a foundation basically for actual interventions that come from the global level through these different frameworks that exist and can be scaled down then at the national and local level. And I think the loss and damage element that Ashfaq was last mentioning is particularly interesting because it's an architecture that is being developed right now, right? We are in the midst of a process whereby the UNFCCC is setting up a pillar for national technical assistance. It's setting up a pillar for providing finance to affected communities and countries. And so the idea, I think, is really how do we manage to get procedures in place, mechanisms, tools that allow to translate what for now are really just words on paper into money, into technical assistance, into support that goes into actual programs and responses for affected communities. So the role, I think that the research, like the one that ICCCAD was just presenting, that the work that IOM and RAMRO and the local authorities are doing, it's really to make sure that there is this knowledge on impacts, that there is this knowledge on the options that people have available. But then we need this middle level of national level engagements. We need something like Bangladesh national strategy on internal displacement, because we need to have a comprehensive approach to this type of processes and of impacts in order to make the case for these global level interventions, right? We cannot just be addressing one specific community and their need, one specific city and the impacts that it's suffering because of migration. We need to have a broad overview of all the impacts that are associated with human mobility in the context of disaster and climate change. We need to be able to understand what are the needs. We need to be able to understand how do we actually prioritize and how do we set up systems for addressing all these elements collectively. So the local level is where the impacts will be felt, where the responses are needed, but ultimately the national level can really provide this comprehensive approach to this issue, right? This issue is diverse. There are different types of mobility, different impacts, different hazards. I think one of the graphs that Lutfur presented was about how different the displacement patterns are, depending on the hazard, how different the losses and damages are that are associated to those displacement patterns. So we need that comprehensive approach, and we can get that through, for instance, policy development like the one that Bangladesh did on displacement, or we can have it through the national planning around climate change that Dennis was referring to. But all this effort will be essential if we want to have an operational architecture on loss and damage, on climate change adaptation, on disaster risk reduction that can cascade down from the global to the national level. I think I'm already over time with my 5 minutes, so perhaps I'll stop here. Back to you, Ashfaq.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo. So now there's a new thing for me. It's called the lightning round. 1 minute response from each panelist focusing on a very specific topic. What do you expect from RFLD and COP30? So like the name suggests, lightning round. I circle through the panelists one by one. So who wants to go first? Volunteers among the panelists? Mr. Anis Rahman, are you still with us? Mr. Rahman, are you with us? Can you hear us? Yes, thank you so much. Could you kindly, in a minute, briefly describe what do you expect from RFLD and COP30? What is your expectations? Okay, maybe then we'll move to Mr. Habibur Rahman. Mr. Habibur Rahman, do you want to tell us about your expectations from RFLD and COP30 in a minute?
Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. This is the opportunity to ask a question. How to access how to we can give the opportunity to access the land after displacement by the riverbank erosion. We have on many good SOD or many laws, but in practice we are not getting this facility in the field level. So how we can advocate or we can raise the issue to the policymakers so that people can get access to land after displacement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Habibur Rahman. Could you kindly clarify your question is addressed to whom? Is it to Mr. Lutfur Rahman or the panel speakers?
Panel speakers.
Okay, maybe I'd refer that question to Professor Siddiqui, as she is more familiar with the Bangladesh policy framework and the government procedures.
What the question I didn't get? What was the question?
The question was how the vulnerable displaced population can claim their rights on the land lost. So how advocacy to government can be done?
First, I would just, because we are coming from global, yes, there are laws within Bangladesh now. If your land goes down, if it is recorded, then you should be getting it back later when it comes up. So those things are there, but for poor people, they never work. Then, vis-a-vis this, if we think of San Diego network and the framework that now they have an office in Geneva, and Caroline, she's looking after how to define and how to, displacement as loss and damage, in what scenario it will be loss and damage. So that type of thing, we need to be more clear, particularly in the next COP. I would say this type of clarity, that not all displacement will be for which you can claim loss and damage. So I would say that partially answers to the question, when this whole loss and damage compensation can be linked with the, those who have lost their land. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you very much, Professor Siddiqui. Any other quick reflections on your expectation from Loss and Damage Fund and also the upcoming COP?
Yeah, I think that is what I'm looking forward to, that how, the same thing, like how loss and damage can more concretely discuss displacement. Now it is very much into a formative phase and lot of lack of clarity at this stage. Maybe we would get more clarity in COP30. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Siddiqui. Now I'll move to Mr. Dennis Mombar about your expectations from the COP30 and responses to loss and damage.
I have another meeting, so I'll excuse myself.
Thank you very much, Professor Siddiqui, for your wonderful contribution.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you mean expectations or hopes, but let's say maybe I focus on the adaptation side of things, because I feel Lorenzo would also maybe talk about loss and damage. So COP30 will be the time when we look at the global goal on adaptation and adopting a framework of indicators, a list of indicators, ideally less than 100. And I think one expectation, if we look from this displacement, your mobility perspective, would be how is this addressed in this indicator framework? Will there be any specific indicators for these topics? Or will it be kind of how can we connect this? So I think an expectation would be maybe to have some clarity on how mobility and displacement fits into the global goal on adaptation, and how we can, if we track adaptation progress, how we can account for these who are displaced, who are in some situations of migration and planned relocation, and how this contributes or how it relates to adaptation success. So I think either specific indicators or some kind of relationship between the indicators and these factors would be, I think, expectations that I have for COP30, to have some kind of clarity on how this can be connected. And for loss and damage, I would hope maybe there can be enhanced access to the loss and damage fund, now that the last board meeting has made great strides towards actually operationalizing it, and how, again, to kind of have modalities where this money actually will be dispersed and where those on the ground can access it either directly or through their national governments, and to enhance these access modalities and actually have that money flowing out. So yeah, these would be two expectations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dennis Mombar. Over to Lorenzo.
Thank you, Ashfaq, and thanks everyone. I agree with Dennis. I think we are at a point where both the Santiago network and the fund are reasonably well shaped. So the issue is going to be, first of all, availability of resources, and then second, this accessibility of resources. And in particular with the Santiago network, the issue is a little bit more on the accessibility side, in the sense that there needs to be a lot of processes and capacity building that needs to happen, I think, at national level in order to for countries to be able to request technical assistance to the Santiago network. So this is, if not an invitation, but at least an indication, I think, that we need the IOMs and the ICCCADs and the RAMers and the other organizations that work at national level to really focus on stepping up the technical capacities for assessments, for the formulation of technical requests on loss and damage, including the aspects that have to do with human mobility at country level, so that countries can elaborate these requests to the network. And on the other side, I think on the loss and damage fund side, yeah, the question is more going to have to do with how much will concretely be available, and in the context of very limited resources, what are the procedures that are going to be available for the prioritization and the allocation in a just manner of these resources, and whether it's even possible to talk of justice when the resources are so limited in the face of so significant needs. There has indeed been progress. There are still these big questions around to what extent these resources are going to be available and accessible for the people who need them the most. And I think those are all considerations that we'll need to look for the next year. So my hope is that we get to a point where there is a system that can respond at scale and in a as direct as possible manner to the needs of communities. Whether that can happen really between now and COP30, at COP30, I'm a little bit less sure about, for what we have seen with the conversations and the interest of governments around this topic. So back to you.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo. I think now is the time I summarize, reflect, and say everyone goodbye. I'll try to keep it short, trying not to put everyone to sleep, because I've jotted down a lot of issues which I think I should be talking about. So I'll start with policy first, but I'll approach policy from multiple angles. Question first, do we need a standalone policy? Or do we need human mobility to be integrated in different sectoral policies like disaster risk reduction policy, climate change adaptation policy, immigration policy, urbanization policy, agriculture policy? Or do we need both? But most importantly, what we need is that policies are coherent and they guide us to the same direction. There are no divergence in policy. So that would be my take on policies. Next would be how developing countries, or the least developing countries, will be dealing with this issue with regards to financing. Because the LDCs and developing countries, unlike the developed countries, they have multiple priorities which are competing with each other, and they have very limited resources. So if you think of a national budget of the government of any LDC countries, the education sector needs budget, the health sector needs budget, the infrastructure sector needs budget, the energy sector needs budget, and most of all, the defense sector, they also need budget. So in terms of prioritization, climate mobility right now, I'd say, is further down in the long list of priorities the governments are facing. Yes, there are climate finances. Yes, there's a discussion to set up the loss and damage fund. But my experience says, no matter how big the fund is, it's never going to be enough to satisfy all the needs. That means the developing and LDC countries can no longer rely solely on international assistance to tackle the adverse effects of climate change. And this is where domestic resource mobilization, innovative approaches to programming comes handy. Say, for example, the private sector. Are we trying enough to involve the private sector in resource mobilization for addressing climate change? Maybe from an investment angle, if not possible from an investment angle, maybe through a corporate social responsibility angle. So that's a question I would leave with all of you to think about. The next point is pretty interesting because I think it's a very unexplored area. Green financing mechanisms. So under the Article 6 of Paris Agreement, we have an emerging variety of financial instruments: carbon credits, biodiversity fund, plastic credits, PREX, IREX. Are we exploring this? Are we trying to think from this angle that the revenue these financing instruments can generate through different green interventions can then be channeled to fight the adverse impacts of climate change? I leave that question with you again to think. Next would be solutions. So what sort of solutions we need? I would kind of divide the solutions into three distinct groups. We would need solutions for people who want to move away from climate vulnerable locations. And while they are moving, they would require a different set of assistance. Their requirement would change. So there should be a set of solutions for the people who are already on the move. And lastly, we need solutions for people to stay. So this is mostly for the track population or immobile population. The data issue came up many times. How do we solve it? So my proposal is that instead of all of us, the development practitioners or the humanitarian actors or the development partners, doing research to fill that data void, why don't we think, how about we integrate data-related questions into the National Statistical Agency's operation? The beauty of that would be, if we're able to do it, the National Statistical Agency, through their regular surveys and censuses, would be periodically and automatically generating data, establishing the evidence base, which can inform resource mobilization efforts, response efforts, and recovery efforts, and many more. Lastly, I'll focus on different layers. So I think at the national level, when you have policy coherence and consistent policies which are guiding you to one direction, it's easier to reach out to other nations in the region and try to build a regional consensus. And once you have achieved this regional consensus, you can participate in global level where directions go in many different directions, when discussions go to many different directions, and regions or the different negotiating blocks in the COP, they can try to slowly influence the policy direction at the global level where it's going to take us. So with this being said, let me stop there. Let me thank all the distinguished panel speakers, the participants and organizers, and the team who has worked very hard to organize this event. Great thank you to all, our sincerest appreciation, and goodbye. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.